most people definitely wouldn't consider Muhammad Ali a wrestler, but it's more than worth mentioning because he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, right?
Like, people was already starting to type. Like, you said, like, people was like, he's not a wrestler. Like,
right.
People are.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby.
Interest of the greater good for me to smoke a joint and calm down.
Greatest. He'll fall an eight to prove that I'm great. And if he keeps talking Jack, I'm going to cut it to five.
No.
Are we recording now?
Yeah, we're recording now.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Ville Chillin' Podcast. This week, we are talking about Kentucky wrestling. Kentucky has a rich history in the sport of wrestling, and, you know, I guess with us talking about OVW, last week we talked about OVW and how they're having some events for the Derby, so this week we kind of figured we'd kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, man, so going back a little bit, the event that they're doing is at the Festa-ville on the waterfront. The Festa-ville starts April 25th and runs through May 3rd. And that's where you have like all the chow wagon, the balloon glows, and all that stuff. But the actual Ohio Valley Wrestling Run for the Ropes is on Friday, April 26th, and starts at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. They have a opportunity for pictures at 5 p.m., a special meet and greet. And then they got 6 matches to follow, including an every man for himself free-for-all over-the-top rope battle royale, or royal, however you want to say that, I guess.
Cash Flow is going to win, man.
Of course he is. Speaking of, you know, Kentucky's roots in wrestling, that he's from here, so. And like you said, that's why we just wanted to go ahead and do this episode, because it got us thinking. You know, we've talked a bit about wrestling already on this show. Whether it, you know, was one, we have like a few episodes about it, but you know, we, after talking about it again at the recent, during the recent Derby Festival episode, just got us thinking. Like you said, you know, there's pretty deep roots. It goes back to, I mean, essentially the 1800s here in Kentucky.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. And before you go into that, like, it'd be cool if they start doing this. I think this is the first year that they're doing this for the Ohio Valley Wrestling Run for the Ropes. It'd be really cool if it starts becoming an annual thing. You know, every Derby year they end up doing, you know, a big show like this. Because growing up, I remember thinking of like the balloon race, or the, you know, the balloon glow and thunder. Those was always associated with me for Derby growing up. So it'd be really cool for something like this to become like a new annual thing, tradition.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. And it's because you get into the Festa-ville with just a Derby pin, like that really, that puts a whole different spin on it. You know, you're already there for so much. It gets you access to so much already. You might as well see a wrestling show. Or it could be that for a lot of people, they just go for the wrestling show, you know? So
good point, yeah.
And it all depends on the turnout and the support that they get. That's going to determine whether or not they keep doing it. So
right, yeah, definitely a great way to bring in like new fans, people that normally, like you said, aren't going to be there for a show. They might just be there for the funnel cakes or something, but then they see, you know, someone jumping off, you know, a ladder or something. They're like, what's going on?
People flying over the top ropes.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's definitely going to get people's attention. So pretty awesome thing, and it's awesome that they're taking the time to do that.
But you said it kind of dates back all the way to the 1800s?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, so when we talk professional wrestling, it got its start in what we could almost think of as like collegiate or Olympic wrestling now. You know, the typical catch wrestling that you see in like I said, I guess colleges and, you know, high schools even, and the Olympics. But that is where professional wrestling technically, as we know it now, technically got its start. It was legitimate combat sport that was it was competitive catch wrestling, And the original and historic World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship was created in 1905 to identify the best catch-as-catch-can wrestler in the world. Before the belt was retired in 1957 and unified with the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Modern day professional wrestling has its origins in catch wrestling exhibitions at carnivals where predetermined or worked matches had elements of performing arts, and it introduced striking and acrobatic maneuvers, turning it into more of an entertainment spectacle. So it was a way to kind of like just add an extra show to the carnivals and everything, but tell a storyline. But it was still, they used traditional grappling and stuff at the start of it, right? So, pretty cool. Because most people will argue the difference with you, you know, and it's like, well, that's still where it comes from.
Oh,
it's just the entertainment aspect of it.
It definitely evolved from actual, you know, like the Greco, you know, kind of wrestling.
Yeah. And if we look down here, you know, there's names that we know in modern day wrestling or modern professional wrestling, like Luthez and the Shamrocks. I mean, Ken Shamrock's been in professional wrestling. He's been in UFC, you know, and he started as, you know, that Greco-Roman catch wrestling. But the name that stands out to us, of course, is Abraham Lincoln. Because that's the one, you know, where we say it kind of dates back in Kentucky to the 1800s. So with Abraham Lincoln, when he was 21, he ended up winning a championship. And because of his size and everything, he trained in the wrestling, and he became county wrestling champion at the age of 21 and gained a reputation for strength and audacity after winning a wrestling match with the renowned leader of the ruffians known as the Clary's Grove Boys. But that's kind of crazy, you know. And I mean, of course, that's a bit of a stretch saying that we have deep roots in professional wrestling because of that, but in essence, we do.
I mean, it evolved from there. I mean, like that's...
Yeah. And I mean, Abraham Lincoln was obviously a huge figure in the U.S. and here. If, you know, his childhood home is here, you can go see that and stuff. But, yeah, yet another professional wrestler from our great state and great city, even of Louisville, is Muhammad Ali. So most people definitely wouldn't consider Muhammad Ali a wrestler, but it's more than worth mentioning because he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, right?
Like, people was already starting to type. Like, you said, like, people was like, he's not a wrestler. Like,
right.
People are very upset about that, believe it or not. Like, there's a lot of people, like, in the comment section on the different forums talking about how they don't think that he should be inducted in the Hall of Fame because they don't really think of him as a professional wrestler, but he's definitely added a lot to the sport.
Even if he wasn't a professional wrestler for like WWE and everything, he was like one of the first boxers to really promote himself in the way that wrestlers often do, right? I mean, he was the Louisville Lip. He made his name. He made everybody know his name.
I'm glad you brought that up because it kind of goes full circle. Because a lot of what he was doing, he was kind of parroting almost like a Gorgeous George. Like, I don't know, like Gorgeous George's job was to get people in the seats, so he would make people come, like, kind of hate him. You know, they would come there to see him get beat up. So, like, whenever a lot of times, like when Cassius Clay or, you know, later Muhammad Ali, like the whole idea was to get people in the seats. So whenever he was doing all his, you know, amazing poetry and his promos, like that was something he was taking from wrestling. So it kind of goes full circle that when wrestling, you know, it kind of hit like a plateau, you know, and boxing kind of definitely surpassed it. He comes back, he goes to WrestleMania, and that's what turned it into a spectacle. That's really transferred it from just like kind of like another sports show to sports entertainment. Like, that's what turned it into something bigger than that, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, despite that even being one simple reason that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame is, I mean, if you look at the actual Hall of Fame list, there's a former president, a former governor, like a baseball legend, apparently in the WWE Hall of Fame. So if they're allowed to be there, then he's allowed to be there,
Definitely.
So it's people who just don't understand those facts exactly like that. There are people who weren't wrestlers who are in the Hall of Fame just because of some contribution they may have made. And so...
That's a dig, though. A baseball legend who's ineligible for Sports Hall of Fame.
For that Sports Hall of Fame. Yeah, because he can't get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, I
poor
guess.
Pete, dude. Poor Pete Rose, dude. Like,
I mean, is what it is. But
that right there, that's the, I guess that's a picture from...
the Inoki fight.
Yes,
right?
that was... it was a very controversial thing. That was, I guess, his only... He was saying, he is a professional wrestler. That was his only wrestling match. Officially, I guess it was sanctioned as a boxing match, but there was a miscommunication where, Inoki is, strong style, catch as can. So he was going for kicks when Ali was just boxing.
Yeah, and it does say that Inoki is a professional wrestler. He's a Japanese professional wrestler, and they were in Japan. So, but it does. We saw somewhere else that it was like a 15-round boxing match. That's how it was advertised. That's what it was supposed to be, and it wasn't. Ali said he took 64 kicks, and Ali landed just 5 punches. It was still declared a draw, probably because of that miscommunication. But either way, he went against a professional wrestler of the time, and he still did it because it was sports entertainment. And he's not the only. It's funny. Like, not funny, but he went against Muhammad Ali, and then he went against Ric Flair. So Inoki even fought a WWE legend, which is pretty interesting.
Right. So, like,
and Ali was the guest of honor when that happened.
So Ali's was there at WrestleMania, which is one of the biggest things as far as like wrestling, definitely comparable to like the Super Bowl wrestling,
which was 85, right?
Right. But then in 96, he's there, like you said, as a special honoree. I think at this point, like, it's the biggest. I know it's the biggest event in wrestling ever, as far as like attendance wise, and it might be one of the biggest like sports attendances ever. North Korea, it was, because I mean, you got to think North Korea, like they had the whole
country,
the whole country there. So, like with that, Ric Flair versus Inoki, but already is legitimate enough. But Ali just kind of like was that cherry on top to be like, hey, yeah, this is something that's really important.
And when he was at the first WrestleMania in 85, he wasn't like just a bystander. He wasn't just an audience member. He served as a special guest referee for the main event. So, I mean, he's all over the place in WWE if you really look into it. He's been a part of many events that they held.
Yeah, he's not just a former baseball player or something.
Yeah. Oh man. And then, I mean, beyond that, those two, of course, being huge wrestlers from Kentucky, you have so many names here. Too Tough Tony, Cash Flow. I mean, how many others? We kind of went through a few of these. There's ex-veterans and like just so many wrestlers from Kentucky.
In this, what we're looking at right now, like, it's a really good list. Like, I think they said over 80 something people, just like you said, from Kentucky, but we know there's a lot of other people here from Kentucky, that a lot of other wrestlers that aren't being listed right there. So a lot of people that are up and coming, and even people that have been here for a while. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, and I mean, Cash Flow's obviously been around a long time, like we said, but then Too Tough Tony, he is a pretty huge part of the local wrestling scene here in Louisville, Kentuckiana area, because he owns the arena, right? He rents out the arena that so many local promotions actually use.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a big history, in the, like the death match scene. So everything, it was saying like CZW, JCW and stuff. Like, I mean, he's a badass. Like, he does some crazy stuff. So, with that, I'm sure he's got like a lot of networks, a lot of networking and, helping each other out. So like he'll bring in like, I'm sure, that's where like Mickey Knuckles and, all the other like kind of death match, but also you got like IWA and stuff. But yeah, Too Tough Tony definitely bringing a lot with the arena.
Yeah, and like to your point, you can scroll through the Facebook page for the arena and see like how many different promotions he's let run events there. The main one right now is Grindhouse. They're pretty big. Like they do a lot. We see a lot of advertising for them and everything, I think they're one of the larger ones that they host at the arena. But they put in some production. They put out some videos here and there. And then IWA, to your point. Now, these are older posts, so I don't know if they still host shows there, but you can see that there's a big history here. So,
yeah, they have a. We've talked about them before. I saw Darren the Inspirer there, the blind wrestler.
Yeah, as part of Grindhouse, right?
Yes, which they do their shows. They do their shows all over, but especially there at the arena. And then they even have they have the DWO deaf tag team. Right, so they have a blind wrestler. They have a deaf tag team like that. So they're very inclusive, as far as stuff that you're not going to see in other wrestling shows. The match right now between Berto with Hippo, that's for the title. I got to see him wrestle, and I do have to say, like, he does a very similar shtick to almost like the Al Snow has head, and then there was that one character we saw who had like the skull.
Yeah, at TCW.
Yes, well, this guy has Hippo, right? And in the match that we saw, the Hippo, like somebody like tore up the Hippo, like whoever he wrestled, dude. And his reaction, you could feel it, dude. Like there's a grown man crying about a Hippo, and you're ready to cry for him, dude. Like he was putting his heart into it. So like it's really cool to see him wrestling with the title now. So
yeah,
good things over there.
I couldn't tell what he was squeezing here in the picture until you said that. That's the Hippo.
Yeah, Mr. Hippo.
Yeah, that's funny. And then, I mean, like you said, you mentioned the dude with the skull. He wrestles in TCW. We've seen him a couple of times. That's Mommy. Can't put Mommy in a corner.
Awesome character.
Man. But then Brad Zilla, who we actually interviewed as part of TCW, and he just got the heavyweight championship. So
that was awesome.
It is, and this is just two promotions that come out of the arena. There could be many more, and we definitely know there's more around the city, around the state. And this is, again, it's just one arena with two really awesome promotions.
Right. So. And then, we got the other right down the street, maybe 10, 15 minutes from there, we got OVW Davis Arena right down the street.
Yeah, Danny Davis Arena. And again, they're going to be at the Festa-ville on April 26th. You just got to have a Pegasus pin to get in. And they've been doing amazing. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan and you haven't heard of OVW at this point, you're definitely slipping, because I mean the Netflix special and everything just skyrocketed their attention. But they're putting in the work too, by doing events like the one at the waterfront and everything that they've been doing since the Netflix special. They go all over the place every year. They go to different arenas and stuff, trying to, put the name out there more and more. And I mean, again, you mentioned Al Snow. He runs it, so it's just again, these are all reasons that Kentucky really does have a deep-rooted history in wrestling, from the original, Greco-Roman catch-style wrestling from Abraham Lincoln all the way to today. I mean, OVW is like one of the largest actually televised promotions, right?
Right. At this point, I think it's the longest, right? As far as like
the longest running.
Right. Longest running, live television. As far as like wrestling, no one else beats OVW for that. And again, I think we mentioned it last episode is, when people think of professional wrestling, like the major ones, I think right now people think, of course, WWE, AEW, maybe TNA, and then, Ring of Honor, as far as like in the States. But OVW, I think, is up there with all those, maybe second to WWE, just because of, of course, like the history or whatever. But OVW, I think, is like a lot of the storylines, the product or whatever that Al Sano's bringing in, it does have that reminiscence of like the Attitude Era.
Yeah,
definitely. Like there's a story and there's a point to every match that you're watching. There's a reason why they're wrestling. So like that kind of separates it from the competition.
Yeah, and it's evidenced by the fact that they've had constant sellout shows recently.
Right.
Oh man! And then not only do you have the wrestlers that are kind of deeply rooted here, you have the promotions themselves are deeply rooted here. You can't really talk wrestling without announcers and everything, right? Or critics or whatever you want to call them.
Dude, and Jim Cornette is that. Like when it comes to wrestling critic, commentator, there's like signs in the crowd that might say, Cornette is God, when it comes to wrestling, because he definitely always has an opinion when it comes to it.
And he got his start pretty early, right? Pretty young in life, 14, according to this.
Yeah, and that's at the Gardens. Yeah, so at the Gardens, Cornette was just, taking pictures of the wrestlers. I think he was saying that he would get, really awesome action images, of like the different moves and stuff, and then sell the Polaroids to the wrestlers, and the wrestlers would, make copies and then, resell them themselves. So it was very symbiotic, and then that's what led them into, doing more of the promoting, and then the eventually like commentating and stuff, and then of course being, an amazing manager and creative in the sport.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just constant history here from promotion to promotion to promotion, from being at the Louisville Gardens with Continental Wrestling. He was part of Mid-South Wrestling for a couple years, World Class Championship Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling, WCW for a few years, WWF, World Wrestling Federation for many years.
And I think it was a little bit before that, when he was in Mid-South, I think it was Mid-South, I don't know, he did what's called like a scaffold match. So the idea is you get about 15, 20 feet above the ring, and he's just a manager, he's never been a wrestler, but he got in there and he's supposed to be like, was that the Midnight Express, I think? I don't know. He gets up there, and he's hanging off a scaffold trying to, I guess, knock somebody else off, and then like he falls.
Oh no.
So he takes a 15, 20 foot drop onto the wrestling ring, onto his legs gives out, he breaks both his legs in the middle of the ring.
Oh.
I think he said made like $2,000 off that.
I bet he did not get in the ring again for at least not that.
Dude, he used to carry around like a tennis racket, and I think he did it like the next week, dude. Like he probably didn't carry it around, but he wheelchaired it around. He was awesome. I'm exaggerating,
but he was also part of OVW.
Oh, very major part of that.
Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Yeah, he was at OVW for several years. It looks like 99 to 2005, and then 2010 to 2011. TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, Ring of Honor, What Culture Pro Wrestling. He had appearances in WWE, Return to Impact, and National Wrestling Alliance, Major League Wrestling. So just a lot of different promotions, a lot of different wrestlers, a lot of different characters, and a whole lot of history.
Yeah, and now he runs the #1 wrestling podcast, the Jim Cornette Experience.
Yep. And he has another one, Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru, and he has a co-host, Brian Last. But they've been It's among the most listened to wrestling podcasts in 2021, 2022, and 2023. With the co-host saying he went so far as to say the podcasts were the biggest thing in wrestling. So pretty crazy. You can tell just doing it for so long, the man's dedicated and he's just doing something he loves. It's not one of those typical jobs, and which that goes to say with everything in wrestling, right? To be involved in wrestling as a pretty much your full-time job for so long, you got to love doing it.
Definitely. And for him to say that, his podcast is the biggest thing in wrestling, it might not be too big of a stretch. I mean,
yeah,
I don't follow wrestling as much as I used to when I was younger, but I listen to his podcast. So I'll watch that sometimes, or I'll listen to that sometimes more than I do some of the newer shows or whatever, as far as the newest Raw or pay-per-view.
Yeah. Well, pay-per-views have gotten crazy expensive these days too, so I know I can't do it all the time.
No, just watch it the next day.
Oh man. And then speaking of wrestling podcasts though, there's another one that's here in Kentucky, the Nice Guy Andy podcast.
Dude, he's awesome.
I don't know how we ran across him and his crew. Was it Instagram or something at one point?
Yeah, I think we were just looking up wrestling Louisville and he started popping up, so we had to follow him. Definitely got a lot of good information from him.
He's all over the place too. I mean, multiple shows, promotions. Most recently, it was a UCW, USWF, TCW Super Show, and I mean, there's a lot going on here, and he uploads a lot of little shorts from it. I don't know if it's literally during the show that he's uploading, but he's in it. He's on it. One of the people here, I think he wrestles for TCW, the other TCW, Triple Crown Wrestling. Steel Wool, right?
Yes.
He's a character, man. We see him in the TCW. We've seen traditional championship wrestling.
Yeah, surprise for our buddy Brad Zilla the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. So TCW, there's two TCWs. You got traditional championship and then you got Triple Crown. And he's in both, apparently. But he's a character, man. Steel Wool is a character. Which is good because, again, to your point, being a character is what gets people in seats. And there he is. And beyond just that, Louisville has a pretty crazy history or deep history in other types of wrestling too, right, Jack? You did a little bit of wrestling.
Back in the day, I mean, in a Nice Guy Andy podcast, I know he was talking about Jim Cornette being the #1 wrestling podcast, but I think Nice Guy Andy is a close #2. Maybe it's he's getting up there for sure, but
he's doing it.
Yes, but I did. To your point, I did have a little bit of history in wrestling. One reason why I'm such a big fan in wrestling. I grew up. I wanted to be a wrestler. It was during the Attitude Era, so there was a lot of people. Everybody wanted to be a wrestler when I was a kid. So, it was one of those things. I think a lot of kids kind of grew out of it, and I wanted to pretty much be a wrestler until I was 17, 18. So with that, there was a lot of backyard wrestling, and right now, for anybody that's watching YouTube, we are actually playing one of our old wrestling backyard videos from what was called the LWA, Louisville Wrestling Association.
And those shows got pretty wild, and I mean, it's true backyard, so it's no mats or anything, and it's pretty hardcore.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Right, I had an amazing time, but for anyone that wants to be a wrestler, back then, we didn't have schools right down the street. You'd have to, if there was any wrestling schools around you, you'd have to probably travel, 100+ miles and then, thousands of dollars, where now there could be one right down the street from you, especially here in Kentucky. There's so many, talent. Don't do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point, it's one thing. It's not an easy thing to take a bump on the mats at the schools and in the actual rings, right? It's no easy feat to take a bump on those. But then when you look at the stuff you're doing here, just straight on the ground or onto, tables, just straight wood, man. I can't imagine.
And when you're young, you don't, you're not thinking of the future. You don't think of things like that. Like, really, in my mentality back then, I was like, dude, just tuck your neck. As long as I tuck my neck, I'm good. And
it looks like your neck got tucked for you a couple of times, though.
Yeah, it, you read the comments section, it's really funny, some of the things being said. And I agree with a lot of it, like, a lot of this stuff was kind of stupid. We can finish. Hey, we can finish it though, bro. Like, we ain't
okay.
Like, that's our buddy Jason Hardy there. But again, like, at the time, you don't feel it because you're young. Look, there's my little nephews back there. It's really cool. Look back on it and them, watch us wrestle. But you be hurting. Like, it's one of those things where it's you don't feel it at the time, but then little things add up. The reason I quit wrestling was because I just lifted something wrong, and I had a stinger, and like pretty much after that, just they said it was like degenerative disease. Eventually went to like spinal stenosis. But I'm sure it had a lot to do with like we're wrestling on like plywood on top of concrete and rubber tires.
Yeah, and those rubber tires aren't doing much, and the cinder blocks definitely aren't doing anything to help.
Nah, that dude just landed on his head. He did too.
Yeah.
But we had a crowd, like we had like 20, 30 people, from the high school. After the school, we'd just go up in my parents' backyard. We'd go to Aircoys Park. We'd bring people in that were professionals. Like, we had people come in from Bowling Green. We had people come in from Lexington. And again, it was one of those things where there wasn't as big of an internet as there was now. This was back in 2007, right? So we were one of the first backyard wrestling groups that was on, social media, doing a lot of promoting and, networking and stuff. So with that, there was people that couldn't get, they couldn't find wrestling. Like now, like these wrestlers, like the people that came from Lexington, he was so talented. He would have no trouble finding that. He wouldn't have to resort to backyard wrestling. Like, he had his professional wrestling card.
Yeah, to your point, we just rambled off like 4 or 5 different promotions that are going on today that are in a ring,
right?
A lot safer, and it just makes a lot more sense in today's day and age. But during this time, it was kind of right before wrestling was getting its real stride back.
It was. It definitely was. It was around the Attitude Era, Jackass. I would say, I had an amazing time. Half the people I was wrestling with, they didn't understand like wrestling as the art, so they didn't understand like necessarily protect your opponent.
Yeah,
there was a little bit of disregard. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're that young, you don't understand like the long-term repercussions of what you're doing. Now when I look at these death matches, I do get nervous. Like Bradzilla said though, like as far as like every style, it's your own art. I do stress to maybe try to wait until you're older, at least trained to do it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And training in the right way, not just going out and getting thrown on a mat. But
yes, yeah. Just tucking your neck is not enough. Now, this guy right here that we're looking at, the guy I was talking about from Lexington, amazing artist. Like, he knows what he's doing. He just, which is even kind of scarier, like for like somebody amazing like that to work with, some of the people that he was working with who wasn't, as trained or trained at all. So that's just putting himself in danger.
Yeah, which you can tell kind of just by watching who's really has regard and who knows what they're doing, who understands it's just an entertainment thing, and who's in there just because they want to hit people with stuff.
Right, which that exactly. But I guess that same thing happens though when you're out there wrestling, you know what I'm saying? Like, and because a lot of wrestlers on the indie scene, they go to different promotions and stuff to where they might not know that person. They don't know their style or, if they'll protect them. So it is just trusting that, it's that yes and. Yeah. It's back to that improv yes and, just trusting your partner.
Yeah, but and you see some matches get not quite like that, but they get a little out of control or people get slammed on things that you can't fake, You
can't fake gravity, man. It's always holding you down. It's always...
But those hard bumps aren't every match that you have. You know what I'm saying? That's like you might take on one of those every couple of matches, every 3 matches to give yourself proper time to heal, whereas you guys were doing this probably every week, if not more.
And it was literally for YouTube views and, you know, I guess some comments. So yeah, I mean, it's funny now looking back, and I'll see like the newer, like the stuff that's going on now, and every other comment section is, well, they did it for a hot dog and, you know, $50. Yeah. But I mean, the reason they're doing, the reason we did it is just because we enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend doing it, you know, but we had a good time. And
well, you mentioned Jackass. They got paid a lot more in the end for doing it, but it's not like they just went into it getting paid for doing stupid stunts. They were doing stupid stunts first.
Right. And then they were, wait, you're going to pay me? Yeah, like they're going to do it anyways. Like, and that's, I mean,
Steve-O has said that many times. He was like, wait, you're just going to pay me to be an idiot? Okay.
Right. Which, I mean, really, you know, to be honest, like a lot of the people that were wrestling that we were just looking at, you know, locally, like a lot of them are just doing it for fun. We're doing it for fun, you know, like someone like me who had like thoughts and ideas of, you know, being a wrestler when I was older, not a good idea. You know, like that's, I mean, it as far as longevity, yes. There was, you know, of course, I read all the wrestling books growing up, and there was a part from the Hardy Boys. I don't know if it was Jeff or Matt who said that he understood that, which it's ironic, him, you know, the person who takes more bumps than anyone, he was saying that you have so many bumps in your card. Yeah. Like as a life, like you have so many bumps, make sure you use them right. And that made sense. You know, some people might have more, some might have less, just make sure you use them right. So I want to stress that, like if you're younger, don't necessarily waste those bumps like that. You know, there was a lot of like, you're reading the comment section here. A lot of the people, you know, some people were harsh, and rightfully so, as far as like saying like you guys are going to get hurt and this and that. I mean, at the same time,
there's just as many people saying how awesome it was, though, and how cool it was to be able to watch. And, like, people have been coming back years later watching the same video, just reminiscing.
And that's crazy.
You know, that's the entertainment aspect of wrestling.
Right, in the connecting part, right? Yeah. It's really cool, like, to be able to see people that said, hey, I watched this as a kid. This is, you know, why I wanted to become a wrestler, right? Like, since then, I first saw this and had dreams of being a wrestler. Like, that's just really cool to me. Like, something as far as, like, connecting beyond, you know, like, space and time, really. Like, never met these people. They don't know me, but there was something that they saw that they connected with. Same thing happened to me when I was a kid, and I, you know, would see, you know, Stone Cold or Jeff Hardy, you know, doing their thing. I was like, yeah, I want to do this. So, not in it like I used to be, but definitely it reminds me of like art or music, you know, just different ways people connect, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, most of the top comments are positive, like saying, you know, awesome job, and, you know, like something like, damn, it looks like it hurts, but you all did awesome. Like, you could tell you're really into it, comparing you to, you know, different wrestlers of the time or through history. So it's kind of cool to see that. But then, like you said, there's also a healthy mix the further you go of people really saying that's dumb. Don't do that.
Understandable.
And you agree. You've already said that, you know, you agree with that. But yeah, it's definitely crazy, and it's just one more time in Kentucky's wrestling history. You know, it was all of the people who were doing this kind of stuff around here at that time. They are the ones who are now, you know, running promotions.
Definitely. I mean, in that video we just watched, I mean, I think that was close to I think it was about 500,000.
400,000.
So we got that one. There was another one, 300,000. One of them got deleted because of music, and it was
this one was
over 1 million, right? So these videos got around at the time. We were like one of the first backyard wrestling videos or channels that was on YouTube, and I was really promoting them heavy. So between like MySpace and all the other, you know, platforms at the time. So like I would create a channel for each character that was part of the promotion and really push them.
Yeah, you can see the different trailers here. And so Jeff. Yeah, you can see again, like when we talk to anybody else, you see the passion and everything that was put into it, and it's really cool. And like I said, these are people who end up becoming the running promotions. Trying to find a way to just bring the sport back because it meant so much at a younger age. So, Villain Wrestling Association coming soon.
Right, one day.
VWA.
Hey. Veterans Wrestling Association?
No, Villain.
Okay, wait.
Villain ENT, Villain Wrestling.
VAW, I was like, wait.
Oh, man. Hey, we get a lot of hits from Google Myth searches, though.
Hey.
SEO right there. But, man, yeah, so like we said, just to kind of recap, we thought it would be kind of cool to talk a little bit more about the roots of wrestling in Kentucky. I mean, my grandma used to talk about watching the reruns of the shows at late night 2 a.m. because she only had the bunny ear antennas, so all she had was local channels, and she would end up seeing those. And I'm sure people who experienced that as well, probably. And I mean, it really did. The Louisville Gardens was going on for how long?
We could probably do a whole show just on like wrestling in the Gardens.
Yeah,
like major things happen there, and that's probably what your grandma was talking about when she was watching, like with the bunny ears. Is probably one of those shows.
I'm sure it was.
Traffic was too bad. Just gonna chill here at home and just watch on TV.
Exactly, and so doing the Derby Festival episode and seeing that OVW is going to be at the Festa-ville on the waterfront, it just kind of brought it back to us like, man, there really is a deep-rooted history of wrestling here in Kentucky, and figured it was worth talking about. And it's funny seeing how all the dots connect. Speaking of somebody who was a wrestler for so long, and you were saying he was into hardcore matches, now running arenas and promotions, Too Tough Tony.
Right.
It's just a prime example of that happening right in front of us. So,
well, even before that just reminded me, like, even before we did the like I was doing the hardcore stuff, you was talking about the Jeff, that's my buddy Jeffrey, our buddy Jeffrey, and like we would do the trampoline wrestling, before there was really an audience, and there was somebody we go to church with, Big John. Dude is like probably close to like 6 foot. Now he's probably like 6'5", close to 7 foot. I don't know, but like this is a dude who used to like backyard wrestle with us on the trampoline, and he was an OVW champion for a couple of years, I think.
Oh, really?
At least a couple times, maybe a couple of years. So, he never did the OWA stuff. Like, he was probably too smart for that. Like, he was just like,
he was one of the people in the comments being like, y'all are dumb. Just go to OVW.
Yeah, definitely. But that's just really cool. I just remember that, like, he is one of the, one of those people that went on to do, major things. Like,
wondering if we might be able to find it, but
yeah, he's on there.
Do you know what year?
Yeah, just type in Big John. Jon.
I'm seeing Johnny Spade, Johnny Jeter. Is that one of those two?
Nah.
I mean, people change names. There's all kinds of names.
No, he should be on there. And we talking about OVW, right? Heavyweight champion, Big John.
This is Wikipedia too. So
no, he was on there though last time I checked. Big John.
It's Jon, not Jon.
That's what I said. I thought.
Okay, my bad. I typed it wrong. There it is.
Yeah, multiple time.
Oh, it looks like. Okay,
Yeah, he's a badass dude.
Time.
Yeah,
that's cool though, and it's cool to see. Again, people that you knew coming into it who made it that far, and it wasn't just backyard for everybody. And again, that's what's bringing it back, is people growing up and chasing that passion now, and at least making sure that there's an outlet for that passion for kids now, making sure the sport doesn't die again. Not that it ever completely did, but it definitely lost its momentum for a while.
Definitely Chris Benoit.
So, but yeah, man, that's it's all good stuff. And like you said, we could probably do many episodes on this, like one just about the gardens and everything else. But I think we'll probably leave it here for now. Do you got anything else you want to add?
Nope. Looking forward to the OVW show at the waterfront.
Yeah, that should be awesome. And again, make sure to go support them because that's what's going to make sure they keep doing it every year.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Same with all these promotions, though. If you want them to keep doing it,
TCW, Bradzilla, keep it going.
Yep, got to get butts in seats.
Yep.
So, with that, I guess we will see you all next time.
Yep.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby.
Interest of the greater good for me to smoke a joint and calm down.
I am the greatest. He'll fall an ace to prove that I'm great. And if he keeps talking jack, I'm going to cut it to 5.